Hey guys, so today we are going to settle a debate. We're going to compare 5.56 to 300 Blackout and see what is best for home defense. Now, why specifically home defense? Well, if you're like me, you'd like to have rifles that have a specific purpose, and my rifle for home defense is very different than my everyday rifle, such as that one right there. And I like to make sure if I'm building out a rifle that I'm setting up the best way I possibly can for exactly how I want to use it. So in this conversation, we're going to discuss three main examples of why one may or may not be better than the other, specifically for home defense. But before we get into that, guys, do me a favor and drop in the comments below, what is your go-to home defense look like? And then we'll talk about it later again. So starting off, I'm going to use the average numbers, right? I'm not going to go over my specific builds. I will show you some B-roll that includes them. Keep in mind, ignore the optics setup. We're strictly talking about different dimensions and practicality, not comparing the overall rifles to themselves specifically or how I have them set up. So the first category I want to get into is going to definitely be length. Now, 5.56 traditionally comes in a longer length. The average length, and the most common, is a 16-inch. So we're going to use that as the example. Obviously, you can go to a 10.3. That's about the shortest I would say most people would recommend. Anything shorter than that, you kind of run into some issues of how effective is the round going to be stable? And it's really kind of like a no-go land for most people. So for this discussion, we're going to strictly compare for a 16-inch because that is the most common rifle used in 5.56. Now for 300 Blackout, the average is 7.5 inches. Yes, you can go down to about 5 inches like the Rattler, the original Rattler actually, and then you can also go longer. There's a lot of common 9 or 11 inch, but we're going to use the average length, which is 7.5 inches. So just comparing those two sizes, you can clearly see if you're using this for home defense, one of them is going to be a lot more practical to go through doorways and maneuver around inside a structure. Now, why is home defense such a big topic for me lately? It's because statistically, if you are going to need to be in a self-defense situation, it's going to most likely be at your home. I think the number is something around 75 to 80% of cases where someone had to use a weapon in a self-defense scenario, it was on their own property inside their home. So that, to me, is why home defense should be number one. You know, it's great to build out different things. You know, that's definitely not how I'd build something for home defense, but we love building different setups. And really, we should start at home, right? What matters to most of us is protecting our loved ones. And that should be a priority build. So you want to do it right, especially if you're just getting into guns or just starting out to set up a rifle. You want to make the right decisions on how you set that up and what caliber you use for that. So I'm going to show you guys just how different a 5.56 and 16-inch looks compared to a 7.5 in 300 Blackout. Again, disregard how the optics are set up. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments because on my DDM4 PDW, I definitely originally built that gun out to be something different before I had a Rattler. And after that, it kind of became my dedicated home defense rifle. Now, I do plan on doing a true content just on that. I'm probably going to go to the range later this week and get some good B-roll because I realized I've had this gun for 3 years. I've never actually done a video on it. Something you guys have asked me about a lot in my previous videos when I did my comparison of that to the Rattler LT. Now my 16-inch here, this is my Daniel Defense DDM4 V9. Why the V9? You might ask, because I get that question a lot. Most people go for the V7. I'm old school. I like the quad rail. Whether or not it's a pro or con is irrelevant, but we're just going to compare the overall size and length of this. And I know there's going to be someone in the comments telling me that, yeah, you could use a 20-inch AR for home defense, and you're absolutely right. You can use anything you want for home defense. But if you set it up the right way, there's definitely a much more practical and better use case scenario for that rifle. So you guys can see, clearly there's a big size difference in these two. So just imagine, close your eyes, think about it. If you heard something coming through your door and you had to grab a rifle, which one of these two would you rather use? What's going to be more cumbersome? What's going to be more practical? Another reason why I wanted to start this conversation leading with the overall size and barrel length is because it's going to bring me to my second point, which is going to be hearing safe. And I know you're probably not thinking about safe hearing if you have to grab this in the middle of the night and defend your life and protect your loved ones. But if you have loved ones around and you have to use this in a terrible situation, and you can already set that rifle up to make it safer, then I think that would be the route to go. At least that's the route I went, because when I think about little kids in my house, if I have to protect their lives, I don't want to potentially also cause some sort of hearing damage from the concussion blast coming off that rifle. So one pro about 300 Blackout is it's designed specifically to both do supers and subs. Now the subsonics are so quiet. This used to be called 300 Whisper. Now, if you're a nerd like me, you've definitely researched that a lot and you know that. If you didn't, hey, there's a new fact you just learned. But yeah, 5.56, it's a great do-it-all round, but you really can't get it quite enough to where it would be hearing safe even with a suppressor. So that for me makes 300 Blackout a little bit better of a choice because you can make it quieter and you don't have to worry about ear pro. You don't have to worry about the sound around. And I know there's been a huge argument about I would rather my neighbors hear my guns going off and call the cops. I totally get that. I fully understand where the sound of an AR going off, one, would be a deterrent if there was more than one intruder, and two, would definitely let your neighbors know something really bad is happening and call the cops. I totally get that argument, but as a dad, from my perspective, what I'm looking at is also the safety of my loved ones in the house. And listen, I'm not a doctor. I can't sit here and prove how much or how little damage that may do, but it's something that I first thought of when I was thinking about getting a suppressor. It's honestly the reason why I got a suppressor for my 300 Blackout, because other than that, I don't really see too much real world everyday need for it in my life. But talking about suppressors, let's go back to length real quick. So you take your 16-inch AR with nothing on the end, compare that again to your 7.5-inch 300 Blackout AR, and now throw a suppressor on it, and you still have a smaller package. So again, that's why I started with length, because you can now check two of these boxes and prove that so far I'm favoring 300 Blackout. It's more compact, it's more quiet, right? So let's get into the third topic here, and this is gonna really be dorking out. We're gonna talk about terminal ballistics. Now, I will say one thing, as I've watched 300 Blackout, go from being that round that everyone had to have, it's life-changing, to 5, 6, 7 years later, where mainstream media is kind of like, not media, but the gun tubers, sorry. It's kind of like, it's kind of overrated maybe. I do not agree with that. And hear me out on this. So the biggest argument for why 5.56 is better than 300 Blackout, specifically when you're talking subs, is the terminal ballistic, especially on gel, is night and day. Like if you're taking a 55 grain 5.56 and comparing that to a 220 heavy, slow, subsonic 300 Blackout round, you're definitely getting very different results. Now, some people might see that as a con. A lot of people often compare the subsonic to a 45 ACP, which is definitely a very lethal round. But here's where I see the advantage, right? You're in your home. You're protecting your loved ones. A bullet that's going much faster is going to have the better chance of over penetrating whatever you hit, whether it's the target who's breaking into your house or whatever. Houses are not made impenetrable. Bullets go through walls. So if you're using your gun in a home defense situation, would you rather have a very, very fast, potentially over penetrating bullet, or something that's going significantly slower and has a better chance of stopping once it hits something? Now, I promise you guys, if you want to search this on your own and just check out the gel comparisons as well as the ballistic capabilities on the penetration, there's definitely some good channels out there for it, and I've watched a ton of it. So if you don't, I saved you the time, and I can tell you right now, that is why, for me, I get better peace of mind thinking about having 300 Blackout subs in a suppressed weapon in my home versus having a 5.56 with really fast, quick 55 grain in there. And I know you can definitely get heavier 5.56 rounds, but you'll never make it to the point where it has a lesser penetrating property than 300 Blackout when you're trying to reduce overall speed. Yes, you can change ammo types, and there's going to be a bunch of other arguments to this, but I'm trying to do a quick overview of the rounds in general because I'm sure I'm going to get so many comments from people telling me about their build and why their build is better for home defense, and I get it. Listen, if you are proficient with what you got, that's all that matters. But if you're coming and you're checking out this video and you want to know which route to build your next AR because you specifically want something for home defense, I think you're starting to put the pieces together with me and understand why 300 Blackout might be a little bit better. I'm not going to say 5.56 is bad. I love 5.56. Clearly, I have the rifle. I would buy many more 5.56. I would buy many more 300 Blackout. That's not the argument we're having. We're not arguing about the specific guns. We're doing a general overview here. So if there's something I missed, a category that would really separate these two, please tell me in the comments below, because I love to hear your guys' feedback. I appreciate it, and I take it all in. I know a lot of you guys have been doing this a lot longer than me. You got more experience than me, and I appreciate if you have something to teach me because it's only going to make me more proficient and better at what I'm doing, just as I'm hoping these videos are helping some people in return. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Again, stay tuned. I'm going to have that video coming out of my 300 Blackout Daniel defense very soon. We'll go over every nitty gritty about that thing, what I love, what I don't love, how I set it up. And again, obviously the use case is going to be pretty clear after this video. But if I missed anything, drop it in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.